Well, good noon to everyone. I'm John Boquette, the associate editor here at the Newtown Bee, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone live on Facebook and who may view us later on our Newtown Bee YouTube channel. This is the third in our series of Friday forums, this week featuring 106th District Republican State Representative Mitch Bolinsky and returning Democratic challenger Rebekah Harriman-Stites. Just a little bit on the ground rules. The forum is going to provide each candidate a 2-minute opening statement. Mitch was the one who, Representative Bolinsky, won the right to open with his statement. Ms. Harriman-Stites is going to close last. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement, and then each question will allow for up to a 2-minute response. Then each candidate, if they choose, can take a 1-minute rebuttal, and then if necessary, each candidate can have an additional 30-second follow-up. Want to show you that your 30-second warning is going to look like that. And once your time is up for whichever time segment you're on, you'll see me show the stop. We'd like to try to ask as many questions as possible, so please honor the directives to stop within a few moments of seeing it if you're in the middle of a thought. Closing statements will be 1 minute. And at this point, I'd like to get things started by introducing Newtown Bee editor Nancy Crevier. Thanks, Nancy.
Hi, thank you to everybody who's viewing this, and thank you especially to Representative Bolinsky and to Rebekah Harriman-Stites for agreeing to be with us. Let's get going on this because we do have a lot of questions and it's so hard to get to all of them. So Representative Bolinsky, if you would like to start with your opening statement.
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. Let me start by just saying thank you, Nancy, John, and to the Newtown Bee for hosting this forum. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's viewing it at home. I hope everybody's well, safe, and hopeful. And I personally am excited that the governor just issued phase 3 announcements as far as reopening our economy. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of you out on the streets. I want to also take a moment to say thank you personally to Rebekah for not only participating today, but for being so gracious and returning my phone call over the weekend and accepting an apology that I offered her for an inappropriate gender reference that briefly appeared on the Mitch for Newtown Facebook page on Sunday. It was regrettable, but it was very quickly corrected. And like we discussed, it wasn't reflective of my values at all. As we move forward from this distraction, I think we're all looking forward to an issues-centered campaign that talks about Newtown. I have an 8-year record of being our town's caring, effective advocate in Hartford, and it's an honor every day to work for you, to work for everybody in our community, and also to learn from you and draw on the voices of the community and contribute ideas and policy that works well in Hartford for the betterment of Newtown. My experience has, my experience has led to a comprehensive vision for what needs to happen at the state level to best support what Newtown needs, which is a great quality of life, affordability, educational self-determination, and the very character of the town that we call home. I have a 20-year record of diverse constituent service, most recently working day and night to bring pandemic benefits and relief in the form of unemployment compensation to hundreds and hundreds of families. And I still, despite a functionally closed state government, my efforts have been doubled to bring relief that none of us saw a need for 6 months ago. I call that proven leadership in uncertain times. As I work for you, my opponents campaigned and taken exception to our community's character. She stated publicly that she's failed us and failed to recognize the inequities that she finds existing in our schools and socially.
I'm sorry,
that our police and our government have failed us. Would you like me to? I will stop. Thank you.
And Ms. Harriman-Stites, please go ahead with your opening statement.
Thank you to Nancy and John and to the Bee and to all of you watching and to those who submitted questions for us to answer for you today thoughtfully and respectfully. I'm Rebekah Harriman-Stites, as you know, and I'm running to be Newtown's voice in Hartford. I've lived in this community for 20 years, and I'm currently serving my second term on the Board of Education, where I'm proud to serve as the policy chair and was the previous vice chair of the board. Prior to that, I served as the Middlegate School PTA president and helped to found both the Ever Wonder Children's Museum and the My Sandy Hook Family Fund. It is clear that I am committed to Newtown. As a single mom, a member of the Board of Education, a social worker, and someone who has founded a small business, I have always focused on moving Newtown forward. From our frontline and essential workers, to parents juggling work and childcare, to our seniors isolated from friends and family, and our resilient small business owners deserving assistance and guidance to stay afloat. I will work for every one of us in Hartford, not just some of us. I am not afraid to stand up to the challenges we face. I will be thoughtful, and I have proven to be nonpartisan in addressing the changes we must endure. With the right leadership, I know that we could not only recover, but we can prosper. We are at a critical impasse in our community, in our state, and in our country. Elections matter. This election really matters. So I look forward to a respectful dialogue this afternoon and to continue the discussion on the campaign trail with voters as we move towards election day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let's jump right into our questions then. We're going to start with you, Ms. Harriman-Stites. And the first question is, what is Newtown's greatest challenge currently, and how will you address it?
That's a tough question. I think right now, everyone has COVID on their mind, right? And so for me, my day-to-day challenge that I have been addressing is how we get our students and our teachers back to school safely. And, it's a comprehensive problem to address. It's something that I've been working all summer with our legislative leaders and our school administrative leaders to make sure that we have the plans in place to move us forward. We know now that having children in the school building is what's best for them socially, emotionally, but we really do need more assistance from the state to help us move forward in this way. Newtown alone has a $1.2 million unanticipated COVID cost that we're trying to deal with. And we're not alone in that. Things like PPE and cleaning supplies, they need to be purchased. For the state to help us by using their bulk purchasing power so that districts are not competing against each other for supplies. That's just one way that the state could help with this critical issue. The state has provided a lot of guidance for districts moving forward, but I do think we need to be on the same page about what's best for children. I'm glad that the governor reversed his initial opinion to have all schools go in full in September and allowed communities to make those decisions for themselves. I would continue to advocate that communities need to make decisions that are safest and healthiest for their own students and teachers going forward.
Representative Bolinsky. Representative, you can go ahead with your 2 minutes, please. What is Newtown's greatest challenge currently, and how will you address it?
Thank you for the question. Newtown's greatest challenge is our very ability to maintain our quality of life. And in that, there are several sub-challenges that all need to be addressed. First of all, educational excellence in Newtown isn't what educational excellence used to be. And we do need to get back into our Gold Star rating for our schools here. Danbury just had a school become a Blue Star or a Gold Star winner. But basically what we're dealing with here in Newtown is on the state level dealing with the issues of our state, which start with having a pretty unfavorable cost of living. People are to the point now where it's getting tough to live in Newtown and certainly difficult to retire in Newtown. I've never voted to raise taxes. As a matter of fact, every single year we fight and we win, although in the minority, our battles are won in increments. But I have never voted to raise taxes. I never will. I've successfully fought against tolls and will continue to do so. Some of the positions that I take are pro public safety. I love our police and insist on our SROs being a member of our school communities. So we also need to maintain local control of our schools and fight efforts for regionalization, which in 2019, I successfully led the way on fighting regionalization and the loss of Newtown school funding.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Harriman-Stites, you have another minute to respond.
Sure, I'll respond to that. I too believe that we need to help seniors retire in place at home by doing things to help them to be able to afford to live in Newtown. I think that just makes good sense. I have a mother who I care about deeply, and I would love for her to stay close by and watch my son grow. I would also love for my son to be able to come back to this community and raise his family here if that's the path he chose. So looking at ways to make Newtown more affordable for all generations is a key priority for me. I also believe that we need to keep SROs in Newtown schools. I have joined with the police chief, the superintendent, to write a letter to our legislative leader supporting our SRO program because I believe it is beneficial and critical in our school buildings.
And Representative Bolinsky, do you have a response?
I can't hear you.
Oh, do you have a response? You get another minute.
Oh, thank you very much. You know, U.S. Senator Chris Murphy has issued a federal bill to defund the police and also to pull school resource officers from our schools. Ms. Harriman-Stites has not taken a position on that bill, and I'd like to see her take one. As far as taxes and seniors go, I voted twice to eliminate Social Security taxes from retirement and Social Security income, or state taxes from Social Security and retirement income in the state, and continue to be an advocate for cost of living improvements and affordability so that elders can age in place. I too have cared for actually 3 parents, losing 2 of them this year. But, you know, the work that we have to do is real work that requires collaboration and reaching to both sides of the aisle, which is something that I've demonstrated a great propensity for.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Ms. Harriman.
Yes, I believe I have very clearly stated that I do not support Senator Murphy's plan to remove SROs from school. I just did that about a minute ago. I've done it on Facebook. I've done it publicly a number of times. So I think where I stand on that issue is very clear. But I do also want to extend my sincere condolences for losing your parents this year. Representative Bolinsky, I'm sure it's been a difficult year for so many, and that is something that can be terribly tough to deal with. So I do sincerely express my condolences.
Thank you very much.
And Representative Bolinsky, you still have 30 seconds if you have anything more to add to this.
Yes. Newtown has challenges, and many of those challenges come down to how the state is managing its finances, and we need to do a lot better at the state level. We have an incredible opportunity coming because there's going to be about a 30% retirement of state employees over the next 18 months. We need to reset our economy and take our mind off of raising taxes. I have never voted to raise taxes. I never will. Democrat freshmen always vote the party line, which is taxes.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. The next question is one that was submitted to us, and you've touched on it a little bit, Representative Bolinsky, but we're going to start with you. Do you believe that the recently passed bill, which limits police immunity will cause police to hesitate to react, and as a result, put them at a greater risk for death or injury when split decisions have to be made?
That's the easiest question that I could possibly have gotten from you. I appreciate it. The police accountability bill that was passed in the special session in July was quickly cobbled together and mostly done in a very, very punitive way. There was a lot of work done bipartisanly prior to that that led to softening of some of the edges of that bill, but ultimately that effort fell apart. I hear from police officers every day. I have conversations, one this morning, about people that are police officers for as little as 7 years this morning, who have decided to go into real estate because they do not want to bear the responsibility, nor do they want to have this stigma that seems to be coming out of the liberal portions of our society, which assumes that all police officers are bad people. Fact of the matter is, without public safety, we can't have a thriving community. Defunding the police is an absurd concept. Just this morning, I received the endorsement of the Police Officers Association of the state of Connecticut for my support and my work on their behalf. So public safety matters. Respecting our police matters. Training our police and having them be accountable totally matters. The concept of removing qualified immunity from the police, very bad idea, because what we're doing is exposing them to more personal liability than we even do for our public works employees in the state of Connecticut. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites.
Sure, I'm very happy to answer this question. First, I want to say that the police accountability bill actually has nothing to do with defunding the police. So I think that's a very, very unfair statement to make. I also want to say that I come from a long line of police officers. My entire family are police officers in New York City, and I have a high respect for the badge and the role they play in communities. I too have had many conversations with police officers. In fact, I had a long conversation with our police chief here in Newtown about the structure of the bill and the reasons why it needed to pass. We were having a cultural crisis around racial equality, and a bill needed to move forward. And it wasn't done in a partisan manner. In fact, there were Republicans and Democrats at the table crafting that bill, as it should be, because that's how good bills move forward. It wasn't until the last minute that Republicans found this to be a good campaign issue. And that is why my opponent continues to try to paint me as a liberal who doesn't like the police, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. There are issues with the bill, and there are issues that I've already taken up with the Judiciary Chair, Steve Stastrom, just last evening. We talked about pushing out some of the tenets of the bill because an April 21st deadline to write new use of force policies and implement it is just not fair. I agree with that. I also agree with looking at the mental health provisions. As someone who has a mental health background as a social worker, I know how important it is for police to be trained to work with people who are having a mental health crisis, but to also be getting really good mental health care themselves. So there's tenets of that bill that need to be looked at there too, and I'm open to that, and so is the Judiciary Chair. I have those relationships to fix the issues in the bill that our police chief indicated were important to him, and qualified immunity was not one of them.
Representative Bolinsky, you have a minute to respond.
Sure. The bill was rushed. It was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. There are a lot of examples of the negative effects it's going to have. There was an agreement at the very last moment when the bill went away from bipartisan negotiation to fix it in the future. Right? We're about to have special session in September, and one of the requests that I have made was to revisit this bill and talk about these issues, and it's been refused by Democrat leadership. So What this bill does ultimately in its current form is it dissuades good candidates from joining the police force. It's making towns generally less safe, and it's also dissuading and causing doubt and hesitation in the minds and hearts of police officers. It's demoralizing. Good officers are resigning, good candidates aren't applying, and that's not good for a community, that's not good for a state, and that's not good for society.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites.
You know, I am hearing a lot of rhetoric and not real facts. And I think, you know, the fact of the matter is that cops want and are open to measures that help to put police who are not doing the right thing and make them accountable. And so that's what this bill does. It does a lot of other really good things. Look, in Newtown, we are very lucky. We have a progressive police force who is already doing many of the measures described in the bill. Other communities aren't as lucky, and this bill helps to keep both police safe, which is my top priority, and the public engaged, and that's what good policing does.
30 seconds.
I can't hear.
Oh, you have 30 seconds to respond if you would like.
Okay. I too have relationships with the police, and the bottom line is, as a community, we can't go forward unless we have safety at home. Having a police officer hesitate about the way he does or she does her job is bad for our community. I completely support our police, and I love the police here in Newtown, especially our school resource officers and the way they are basically woven into the fabric of our school system and our community. Newtown is very special.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Harriman-Stites, 30 seconds.
I don't know what more I can add to this. I agree that our police department is special, that we need SROs in schools. I also know very strongly that we needed to pass a police accountability bill given the state of our state, our country, and our world right now.
Thank you, both of you. Our next question, Ms. Harriman-Stites, I'm going to have you start with. Voters will be asked if they support consideration of limited housing up at Fairfield Hills in Newtown on the ballot in November. Are you pro or con for housing up at Fairfield Hills, and why?
Right. So, I mean, it's a tough question, and it really does come down to local control, although I know the state may have some role in that moving forward. We do need to look at housing options for all residents. And the more I think about housing at Fairfield Hills, the more adaptive I am to the idea. I would need to see what it would look like, what the density would look like, what it would bring to the character of that area. I was skeptical, I'll be honest, about having a brewery at Fairfield Hills. I wasn't sure how that would engage with the walking trails and the NYA and the community center, but I can see that having a really vibrant business there at Fairfield Hills really is feeding into everything else we have going there. And I think that's sort of what has me turning the corner about housing there. Bringing more residents into our community will also help with our economic development and increase our tax base. These are all things that we need to do. And I think we need to be open to the idea that this could be a plan that could work for Newtown.
Anything more? Right now you have whole 2 minutes. Okay, let's move on.
So I'm used to, like, you have 1,000 words, 250 characters to answer this. So I'm pretty.
All right, Representative Bolinsky, you actually have your whole 2 minutes still to respond to this question. You pro or con housing at Fairfield Hills?
Housing at Fairfield Hills is an interesting question, and it's a dynamic scale that we need to look at. Now, I've had a lot of conversation with First Selectman Rosenthal about Fairfield Hills and housing, and I happen to agree with him very strongly with the fact that we don't necessarily want to open the doors and say, you know, build apartment buildings at Fairfield Hills, but we need to entertain proposals from developers and create something, if it's possible, viable, and the town can agree upon it, that does create vitality on that property. If we don't, we're looking at about a $25 million investment in raising the remaining buildings. So it's important for us to consider, not just give blanket permission, but consider proposals. For instance, some very interesting, some very progressive, some very beautiful communities have been built around closed military bases in the past. And Fairfield Hills, you know, as a former psychiatric hospital, you know, has a lot in common with those types of facilities. But if anybody's ever visited or would like to visit someplace called Devens in Massachusetts, it's a converted Army base. Mixed use, very, very, very high scale, beautiful mix of housing, retail, entertainment, free concerts, all the things that Newtown has shown a propensity to love. Same thing was done at the Glen in Glenview, Illinois, with a retired Air Force Reserve base. Beautiful upscale communities. So I'm not prepared to say that we should be housing at Fairfield Hills, but I am prepared to say that we should be considering it. And I support Dan Rosenthal's referenda on the November ballot.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites, you do have a minute to respond.
Sure. No, you mentioned Fort Devens, and I've been there a few times for lacrosse tournaments with my son, and you're absolutely right. It is a lovely place, and I would like to see Newtown develop in a way that's similar. I will too be supporting the ballot question. I have had conversations with First Selectman Rosenthal about the very issue, as I know you have mentioned it as well. I think really the clear thing here is to make sure that we are developing smartly, and I trust our local leaders to make those decisions that are best for the character of Newtown and can help us move forward and expand economic development in our tax base, because that's really the most important thing here.
Representative Bolinsky, a minute to respond if you'd like.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Rebecca and I somewhat agree on this, so this is nice. Here's what we need for Fairfield Hills, in my opinion. We need to have that property be sustainable. Okay, the openness to be able to consider and to dream about something as beautiful as Devens or the Glen is something that we owe to ourselves, and we owe it to our children. As far as how it ends up, it needs to be something that's in the hands of the community to decide how appropriate it is. But I'd hate to let it sit and continue to deteriorate at this point, particularly since 2021 may bring a proposal from the Connecticut Senate to also take away our local zoning control. So I think we should act proactively before that happens.
Sure. I actually just wanted to respond to one of the things that Representative Bolinsky said, and that's that we agree on this issue. And I think the thing that people would be most surprised to learn is that I really do come from a place of agreement on both sides of the aisle. I have a record of leading in a bipartisan way. In fact, sometimes being the only Democrat voting with Republicans. So I think folks will see that if you just sit down and talk to me, I am not a liberal all the way on the left. I am someone who is moderate, who can listen, and who can come to consensus on most issues.
And Representative Bolinsky, your last 30 seconds on this question.
Okay. I'd love the opportunity to sit and speak with my opponent about the virtues of Fairfield Hills. At the last election cycle, I offered to sit with her and discuss at length special education in Newtown. That never happened. There was a refusal to talk about it. Instead, the Board of Education went into something called a self-study. which resulted in nothing.
Right. Our next question that we've received is from a couple of people, is a little more on the personal side. How does a candidate's deportment, whether working or as a private citizen, reflect on public perception? And Representative Bolinsky, I'd like you to address that first. So how does a candidate's deportment, how you behave in public, how does that, whether you're private or whether you're representing the town, how does that reflect public perception?
Character matters. It's the most important thing in the world. You want to always be your best. And when you do make mistakes, which people do make, you want to own up to them. I have a lifelong history of being somebody who stands for equity and equal rights for all. My family is charitable, and we participate openly in diversity. When it comes to the challenges that we have just experienced in Newtown and are still experiencing through COVID-19, Newtown has about the most responsive, caring representation in the state of Connecticut. My phone has been ringing 15, 16 hours a day for 6 months. People that had special situations and people that were closed out of their jobs and not able to access pandemic relief benefits. My legislative aide and I worked out a comprehensive procedure to be able to work around a closed government and provide those benefits for hundreds and hundreds of families. I'm working currently with a couple of residents on problems with solar scam artists. Now, there are great solar programs out there, but and I'm proud to have actually stimulated and gotten a reward for a system repair and a lifetime warranty on the system for a resident that is in Newtown but not in my district yesterday. And I'm working on reverse mortgage relief for senior citizens right now as well. So I'm all in for Newtown.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites, again, how does a candidate's deportment, whether you're working or as a private citizen, reflect on public perception?
I think it's really important to lead with character first and honesty first. And I really, I also believe that actions speak louder than words. And so that is why when our country has been going through a huge crisis of culture and race, I stepped forward and helped found the Newtown Allies for Change and helped to bring together a rally that was, you're right, Representative Bolinsky, as a person on the Board of Education, it was difficult to hear what had been happening in our schools. But I believe a leader responds and reacts appropriately, admits when they miss something, and takes accountability for things that happen under their watch. A real leader with character doesn't blame other people for things that happen. A real leader with character moves forward with credibility to make change. And I think I've shown that I'm that type of leader. I know that we have a huge racial equity issue in our Newtown schools. I also know that sometimes the chain of command does not allow those issues to come to the Board of Education level. And so when I became aware of them, I worked really hard to look at my own implicit racial bias and make changes in our district that would be better for students going forward, so that no student has to ever endure some of the things that our students have endured. You're right, I apologized for what was happening in our schools to our students, and I'm proud that I was strong enough to stand there, hear those things, take it and apologize, and know that I could help them moving forward. And that's what I have been doing every single day.
Thank you. 1 minute, Representative Bolinsky, to respond.
Okay. You know, actions do speak way louder than words, and I'm very, very proud of the work that I do in this community and the recognition I get in this community. People write unsolicited letters to the Newtown Bee about the things that I do to have helped them. And that is something that is ingrained in me, learned from my parents. It's part of my value set. And I care so deeply that oftentimes I sacrifice my own well-being to continue working until we find solutions. And I think people in this community know that, appreciate that. And I know throughout my life, I've had the opportunity to help people save their businesses, to save their families, to save their homes. And each of those opportunities helps me sleep at night, makes me a very happy man.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites, 1 minute.
Yeah, and I do thank you for your service to our community, Representative Bolinsky. I too have represented and served our community well. I volunteered countless hours of my time. Sometimes I think being on the Board of Education is more work than my full-time job. It's a second full-time job that I don't get paid for, and it can be very thankless, but the thanks I get is knowing that I am really making our community a better place, and I know that you can share in that feeling as well. You know, I've worked for nonprofit organizations my entire life, helping them raise money to make their communities better, including many nonprofits here in Newtown. It's just something I believe in. It's something I learned from my mom, who was also a single mom, working a few jobs to make things happen, but also was the PTA president and my Girl Scout leader. So I learned the value of integrity, character, community, and hard work from her, and I hope that I make her proud.
Representative Bolinsky, would you like to take your last 30 seconds to respond?
I'm not going to respond in, you know, all I'm going to do is say that I love this community, and people know that. I love the people here. In Newtown, kindness does matter. COVID's been a challenge for all of us, a little bit of on-edge behavior from time to time, because it's just not natural for human beings to be locked up and not able to socialize. But you know, I listen, and I'm as honest as the day is long, and I just can't do enough to help anybody who has an opportunity to be helped. Thank you very much.
Final 30 seconds, Ms. Harriman-Stites. Anything to say?
I really think we can leave it at that. I'd like to hear more questions.
All right, let's move along then. So approximately 16% of Newtown's population and growing is 65 and older. How do you propose we make Newtown a more livable community for our aging population? Representative Bolinsky, can you start with that?
Well, there's been an effort that's been led by John Paguzzi and the Friends of Newtown Seniors, which is pretty admirable. We're trying to get Newtown, with the help of, obviously, with First Selectman Rosenthal and the senior community, to certify Newtown as a senior-friendly community. What does that mean? Well, one of the first things that we need to do is make sure that this is affordable and people can afford to age in place here. We also need to control the taxes on retirement and Social Security income, which is something that I've been successful in passing, only to have one of those efforts vetoed by Governor Malloy 3 years ago. But we have to fight for it. It also involves a vision where our community does what our community does best, which is reaching out and caring and making sure that, you know, at any time, you know, when there's a heat wave, when there's a power outage, we all reach out just instinctively to our neighbors, and we check on them and we say, are you okay? Is there anything that you need? So culturally, we can't love each other enough. So as silly as that might sound, functionally, we have challenges that every suburban community has. Transportation. Okay, when a senior gives up their license and they lose their ability to drive, it's pretty darn tough for them to get to doctor's appointments if they're aging in place. So we do have community resources, but we need to support them. And we need to recognize that this is the fastest growing piece of our population. Our seniors, the greatest generation, there are more of them now than there were 10 years ago, and in 10 years there will be more than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites.
Yes, part of what makes Newtown so great is that it's an intergenerational community. I've been proud of the work of the Board of Education and our parent groups to bring seniors and school children together. Obviously, that effort got a little curtailed with COVID, just like pretty much everything else in the world. But I'm excited for that to move forward again, because I think that partnership is so incredibly important for learning and for community building. But, you know, we really do need to recognize that this community is difficult for people to live in on a fixed income. You know, the work of our senior center is admirable. I was proud to partner with them to bring lunches to seniors during the pandemic. That was just a real highlight to see them drive up, put hot meal into their car and send them on their way. And I know the Senior Center did great work around giving them crafts to do and other activities to keep them moving and motivated through such an isolating time. But on the state's level, we really do need to look at some tax relief to help have them age in place comfortably. We need to phase out and expand the phase out of taxes on Social Security and pensions so that seniors can keep more of the money that they earned. I had a phone conversation with a senior the other day that, said, I was surprised to learn so much was getting taken out of my pension. I live on a fixed income. I'm counting every penny. We need to do something to help them. What we really also need to do is to really hold prescription drug companies accountable and hold down the cost of prescription drugs. People shouldn't have to choose between paying for a life-saving medication and buying food. That's just not okay. We need to look at property tax reform. Taxes that are higher than the value of a motor vehicle or a home are really breaking a lot of our seniors. So there's things that we need to do comprehensively to make them comfortable, to keep Newtown the intergenerational, wonderful community that it is.
1 minute, Representative Bolinsky.
Okay. It's interesting that many of the things that my opponent just mentioned are things that I have sponsored, co-sponsored, voted for, and put in place. For instance, the state tax relief on retirement income and Social Security income. I've also co-sponsored the bill in special session that created a cost reduction for insulin for diabetics, and have been working with Kevin Lembo on what he called the public option. So I'm not sure where it's going. It didn't make it anywhere during regular session, but we didn't have enough time to work it. I think that the cost of insurance and the cost of prescription drugs are offensive and needs to be addressed. And I think that the state's insurance system might be a way to subsidize, or not subsidize, but at least appropriate the costs and take advantage of economies of scale.
A minute.
Yes, sure. Kevin Lembo and I just had a conversation the other night, actually on Facebook Live, because he knows my commitment to the public option. As a small business owner and somebody who works for a nonprofit now, allowing small businesses and nonprofits to buy into the state insurance plan is just a winning solution. Kevin Lembo, as our comptroller, has done incredible work saving the state money on healthcare and prescription costs. He's looking for a leader like me to join him in that fight. I will lead on that issue. I will not just co-sponsor it. I will sponsor that bill because, as a small business owner, one of the reasons I sold my small business was the cost of healthcare was breaking me. And someone who's working for a nonprofit right now, our healthcare cost just went 8% up in a year where we cannot afford that increase. In fact, I've been able to help people navigate the unemployment system because I've been furloughed 20% and had to navigate the unemployment system myself. So really, solutions like that can help people to live in Newtown are essential.
Bolinsky, you have final 30 seconds.
Okay. I met several times and have a very nice relationship with Kevin. And for the first time ever, I did not get a 100% score from CBIA because the bill considering and forwarding the conversation about ways to use the state's risk pool to affect positive change for all of Connecticut. I voted yes in appropriations to advance it to further conversation on the condition that it did not create a huge financial impact on everybody else in the state.
Ms. Harriman-Stites.
No, I just want to say again, I'm prepared to lead on this issue. I think it's one thing to, say that you work bipartisanly, but I believe that when you call people liberals and blame and play the blame game, it really doesn't get you very far in Hartford. I have those relationships already to move Newtown forward and be an actual positive voice for Newtown and Hartford.
Last question.
Right. Oh, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. We have a lot of questions. Okay. Let's start with Ms. Harriman-Stites. Despite the current rainy day fund windfall, a combined projected deficit of $8 billion looms for 2022 and 23. What action will you take to reduce the anticipated budget?
That's scary, isn't it? And we just keep bringing up Kevin Lembo because his ears must be ringing today. But he's done an excellent job moving us forward. And I just want to say how proud I am to work, how proud I will be to work alongside him if I'm so lucky to be reelected. That deficit is a scary, scary number. And I've heard you say it before, Nancy, and you always want to say million, and then you have to change yourself to billion. And, we have a real problem on our hands. And it's a problem that's not going to change with incremental, small changes. We have to try to make big picture investments to bring money back into our economy and raise revenue. I have some small solutions, but I'm definitely just one person. One of the things I did, the first thing I did on the Board of Education was bring in a grant writer to write grants for the Board of Education. I believe that the state needs to bring in more federal revenue, and having a central grants office to do that and to help push revenue down to nonprofits is a really, it could be a good thing. It's not going to close a $1 billion deficit. I do not want tolls, just like the next person. But we need to look at big solutions in order to see if we can make some change. Tolls not the answer either, because I believe that it puts an unfair tax burden on working families. But if there's a solution to have tolls that would not burden working families or people commuting for work every day that can't afford it, I would be interested in hearing that option. We have a crisis and we have to put every single thing on the table, and we can't be blind to the fact that real hard choices might have to be made, and they might not be choices that any one of us wants to make, but we have to make them for the betterment of Connecticut.
Representative Bolinsky.
This is a subject I feel very passionate about. So I've had the privilege of working on the Appropriations Committee for 8 years, and I've become very analytical about what we're looking at. It's also very difficult for the average listener to relate to the fact that having an $8 billion 2-year budget deficit facing the state of Connecticut in 2021, 2022, what it actually means, because the number's so magnificently high. That's about $50,000, $50,700 according to Yankee Institute, for every man, woman, and child that lives in Connecticut. So the number's big enough to choke a horse. So what do? Well, if you think back about 15 minutes, I made a mention of this incredible opportunity that's before us, okay? I've done financial analysis on our budget, line by line by line by line. I presented to the Appropriations Committee the potential for $2 billion worth of savings in our last budget cycle. Some of it was realized, some of it was not. But here's what's going on right now, and this is really exciting. The state of Connecticut has per capita the highest rate of expense on state government in all the country with the exception of California. Okay, but right now, because of the age of our workforce and because of COVID, we're looking at a significant retirement. This is the beautiful, wonderful opportunity that we have been waiting for all of these years to rescale, repurpose, and reinvent our state government using technology to leverage efficiencies, make the government work better for the people and cost less.
Thank you. A response, Ms. Harriman-Stites?
Sure. I mean, I think looking for efficiencies is a good idea. It's not going to close that big of a deficit. I mean, I think what we really need to do is invest and celebrate economic development, really bring more money into job growth. Connecticut Republicans tried to cut $300 billion. Sorry, 300 million. I'm like you, Nancy, now billion, million, when you get a number that big, right? So $300 million from Yukon. And that really can stimulate job growth. We've attracted other businesses from other states, but it's given little in return. How do we invest in Connecticut businesses in order to increase the tax base and promote job growth? I mean, we need big ideas. I am fully in support of looking at the budget line by line and seeing where we can achieve cost savings, but that's just not going to do it. And Representative Bolinsky has had 8 years to try to get it done. So I think it's time for a change.
Representative Bolinsky, you have a minute to respond to that.
Yes, it's very, very easy to say that I support economic development and not have a plan to do it. We have this opportunity right now to rescale our government without a single layoff. We don't have to lay off a single person. We don't have to create hardship. We can honor our commitments and we can take care of our families and rescale our government. And in the process of that, the investment in economic activity comes in the form of tax credits and investment in people, technology, and capturing companies to come in from out of state or companies that are in state to expand and become corridors of technology within the state of Connecticut by using the concept of lowering taxes. Because when we lower taxes and clear the decks of overregulation by a government, we invite people in, we become a business-friendly environment, and we have this opportunity to, at a lower tax rate, increase our revenues dramatically.
30 seconds, Ms. Harriman-Stites.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of words, but not a real plan or a solution. I mean, I think rescaling our government sounds like a really great idea, but I don't really hear a plan to do that, nor do I see any action behind it. In order to make big changes, you need to have the relationships to put forward those ideas. Ideas and plans are just ideas and plans if you don't have the relationships to push forward and get them done. And that's what I would bring to the table.
And finally, Representative Bolinsky, you have your final 30 seconds if you would like.
Thank you. I take exception at any insinuation of lack of relationships. 3 years ago, I rescued $5 million worth of Newtown school funding because as a member of the Appropriations Committee with a wonderful relationship with our leadership, I saw that in the budget line and I took care of it. There are multiple times where I have worked collaboratively and beautifully with the Education Committee's leadership on special education issues to do things that locally we've not been able to do.
Thank you to both of you. I'm so sorry that we can't even get to all of the questions today that have been presented, but I would like to start with Representative Bolinsky, you will be going first with your 1 minute closing.
I've been representing Newtown in the Hartford, at the Capitol in Hartford for 8 years. I'm a 20-year community volunteer. I love this town. And I have a vision for Connecticut that sees us pulling ourselves out of this 25-year economic melee by taking advantage of this situation that exists right now, which is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime chance to reduce government, reduce regulation, and grow our economy and our state revenues. With those grown state revenues, we can afford to do so much more with education, with transportation for our seniors. We have this wonderful opportunity to partner in Hartford instead of bicker in Hartford along party lines. And I have the relationships to make that happen.
Thank you. Ms. Harriman-Stites.
Sure. Thank you so much to the Bee for hosting this important forum and for all of your thoughtful questions. And I'm excited to hear that we didn't get to many of them. I love voter engagement. In Newtown and across the state, we are facing serious challenges, reopening our school buildings, getting our economy back on track, and ensuring access to healthcare for all of our residents. But we can't let this crisis distract us from the critical issues of racial equality, gun violence prevention, environmental justice, and energy reform. I will tackle these issues using my experience, passion, and credibility as Newtown's representative. We need an independent thinker in Hartford, ready to embrace the changes not only in our town, but throughout Connecticut. I have the proven experience, record, and relationships needed to be our strong voice, and I will never shy away from a tough conversation. I thank Mr. Bolinsky for his many years of service to this community, but I respectfully ask Newtowners to choose a different path on November 3rd. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate both of you taking the time to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting this. This has been a wonderful time. Thank you.
It really has. We appreciate it.
And once again, thanks to Representative Mitch Bolinsky and Rebekah Harriman-Stites, his Democratic challenger. We want to invite you back a week from today at noon, where we will hear a more abbreviated forum with the unopposed candidate in the 112th district that represents some neighborhoods in southern Newtown, J.P. Sredzinski. And would remind you that if you would like to share this video on Facebook, it will be available on the Newtown Bee's Facebook page, and in a matter of a couple of hours will be available for folks to replay on the Newtown Bee's YouTube page. Once again, we want to thank everyone for watching. We want to thank all the folks who submitted questions, and we did run a little long, so we do want to apologize for anybody who didn't get to their super sandwiches today, because we another 6 or 7 minutes. So thank you all for participating, and we'll see you next week at the last segment of our Friday forums.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.